Firstly, let me thank each of you for stopping by and sharing with us the beautiful life that was Sandy Baumeier. Secondly, let me preemptively apologize for whenever I lose it going through this. There will be many of you I don't know very well or at all. Sandy lived for over 57 years. I knew her for about 18 of those, the last 18. They were the best 18 years of my life. Sam and I came from very different family backgrounds. I came from broken homes and no home. Sandy came from one of the most lovely and loving homes one could imagine. She adored her brother, her mom, her dad. She and her mom spoke every single day. Every single day. The family togetherness was like a corny movie. No way this could be real, but it was. I believe it was the strength of the family, the love for one another, that truly made Sandy the unbelievably beautiful human being she was.
Bob was such a wonderful guy, genuine, friendly. Lori has been amazing. Sandy was so close with Bob. She knew that it was part of the natural passing, the natural evolution of life, but to lose someone who had been there so long, wasn't. It still was hard.
Yeah, even seeing it coming, and everybody knew it was coming, but it also speaks to that whole family. It was almost corny the way they were as a family. Here these guys all are huggy and lovey, and life is good, and we're all staying together, and we always have been together, and we always will be together. And I think that's a major contributor to Sandy. I have a cribbage board where the last game was not completed that they played just prior to Bob passing, and the pieces are now glued in exactly where they were. So it's Sam and her dad's last cribbage game together. And it meant she learned just so she could play with him, because he played with his brothers. She'd call the house, and once in a while her dad would answer, and Sam would talk to him for a few minutes, and then he'd get passed on, or she'd get passed on to Lori, her mom. And then her dad would be off doing something, and they'd talk for 25 minutes, and then it'd be, okay, well, I love you, and tell Dad I love him, and you'd always hear, me too. I think it's such a major contributing factor in making Sandy who she is.
They had better sibling interaction, than a lot of folks. If you look at the length of time that Cherie has been a great friend to Sandy, and then with Dawn and her, it's an extension of that family. And you look at Dawn and Cherie's kids, with Josh and Karina and Aaliyah, and Sandy's been there so much and involved, with them, and then the grandkids, strength and affection that brothers and sisters that you aspire to have. This television kind of family, and it's a good characterization, because you go look, it's like, hey, there's they're happy, they're genuine, they're real. It wasn't an act, it wasn't television, it wasn't a script. It still isn't. When they feel genuinely, and their bond and affection. There was never sibling rivalry. There's always like what's best for one another, and always there was unwavering support. You look at the course of time, Sandy, dearly loved, all of Don Shrie's kids and their grandkids and Christmas and, holidays and getting together with them. Just the opportunity to get everyone together is just, it's not a television series, it's real life, but it's the kind of life that you aspire to have.
Right.
It's the kind of siblings and friends. And I'd say, they're brother and sister, but they were friends more so. They were born into each other's family. You don't have to stay friends, but I think, you're really blessed when you can, and they certainly had that. But I'm Scott Baumeier. Sandy and I were married. We didn't date in high school. We were friends, but we did start dating in 1985. When I came back, I was in the military and came back for my best friend Kelly Grimm's wedding. I had spent a lot of time with Cherie, and we were pen pals and went back and forth. And Sandy and our lives they'd continued on, and in different paths. But then Cherie's like, well, you got to go see Sandy, and we went out, and it didn't take much cajoling. We went out to where she worked when she worked for Dr. Kokich, and you look at some of the folks who were there. Mara and Bibi and Mary and just different people that you meet and they were such a good group working together in Dr. Kokich's office. We went out to dinner at down on the waterfront, the Ruston waterfront, one of the first dates we ever went on, and she ordered shrimp, and I will admit at the time I had never had shrimp with the shell on. And I didn't eat much. I was like, well, I'll be more adventurous, sure. So, the funny part is I didn't know how to eat shrimp. I didn't know I picked one of these things and just started chewing on the darn thing. And I was like, what in the did people see in this? This is ridiculous, I brought this specifically because this is one of my favorite pictures of Sandy, and you'll get to see it. But this is this is probably the third or fourth picture. She came over to Germany. In '86, shortly after we were started dating. We had gone to where we used to live when I was a dependent in at Gonzerath, Germany, and it's a beautiful, it's picturesque, European village as you've ever seen. Mountains all around, sit down in the valley, tall church, and just a lot of little houses with slate roofs and single central road that runs through it. And we lived right across from the main gas house and bar, for those of you that don't follow that. But we got up, like, no, we got to go see it from up on the hill. We'll go up here. And so we drove up to the hill, and at the time I had a little BMW 3 Series. So we drove up there. No, we just go a little farther. We'll go out here in the field. Well, as a kid, I used to walk up there, but you didn't drive a car up there. Not that time of year. This is fall, as you can see by the leaves in the pictures. Well, it's also rainy season, and so we got stuck in the mud. And we ended up going and having to back the car down through the entire field, somebody's plowed field, because we couldn't go forward, couldn't go sideways, so we ended up going backwards down this field, back down to the town. And, she just took it in stride. I was like, really? And it was less than a week later, we were going to Berlin, going along, and that same car, the engine blew as we were getting back on the Autobahn. And she took it in stride. It's like, well, okay. And so we, made a couple of phone calls so a friend would come and pick us up the next day. That night we stayed in a tiny little hotel, and we asked the innkeep, like, hey, what would you recommend to do? He said, well, why don't you go down to the fish market? They have music down there, in the evenings, and it's, real nice, and, it's a fun place. Well, okay, we'll go do, let's go do that. Yeah, little did we know, as we go down there, it's like you've never seen so many fishnet stockings, push-up bras, and people who are out to earn a living in the evening hours. And I'm like, what in the hell does this guy think? We were pretty young. I mean, we were both, 22, 23 at the time. What the hell do you think we were looking for? We were just looking for a place to sit down, have a beer, and chat. Right. Not that place. So anyway, just, but she took it all in stride,
Yeah.
just like everything. Whenever the opportunity presented itself, Sandy and I would go and we'd go by the water. We eventually got into boating, and the times we spent with a couple of boats, we'd go and you'd meet such fascinating people, and we had some adventures, and just a lot of different things. I remember one where you could go and tell that she was easygoing. One of the things I remembered that from boating, where she kind of took it in stride, we would leave in the mornings and go out boating. So we would go up to Roach Harbor or Friday Harbor or something. We were on our way, and as you can imagine, occasionally you'd get a little bit sleepy. Well, I sandbarred the boat. The tide was going out, sandbarred the boat, and we were just on the wrong side of the marker. That was the closest she came to losing her cool, because what are we going to do? And I'm looking around, it's well, I think we're going to hang out till the tide comes in. It's slowly tipping onto its side. We're sitting there, and she's freaking out with dinner. I'm going to go take a nap. What do you mean you're going to go take a nap? The boat's not going anywhere. I've been up all night. I'm going to take a nap. I think that's the closest that she came to an unsolved murder.
Yes.
But she, took it in stride. I said, to tell you what I'll do, I'll put a towel across the back of the boat so no one sees your name, because we'd named both boats after her. They were both Sandra Jean. We had really some great ski trips. I remember, first time we did, a group trip to Schweitzer. You get 4 or 5 couples together, and ski in, ski out, and we were equally paired. Both mostly, the middle blue runs, and we'd go and get into the big stuff occasionally, but neither one of us were Olympic contenders or anything crazy like that. The day that Sandy broke her back, it was a nice day. It wasn't particularly bad weather, and I had been skiing ahead of her a little bit, probably 50, 100 yards or whatever, just kind of the way things work. She got spun around, hit, some slush, because it was springtime skiing, and hit just that softer, type snow. And it spun her around to where she actually her rear was facing downhill and she was facing uphill. And then she wiped out where, her bottom fell down, but then her front compressed down so much that she had a vertebra in her middle back that was compressed kind of in a wedge shape, 50% compression. And then she had a piece that broke off and compressed into her spinal column. It was a 50% compression, 50% intrusion. And, I skied down the bottom because I didn't see it. And I waited and waited. And it's okay, this is abnormal. We never get separated by this much. Jumped on the ski lift, went back up, and I'm bomb-assing down to go find her. It's because there's no way that she wouldn't have continued on. She was a good enough skier. It's okay, did she lose a ski? Did anything happen? What happened? And I see there's a gathering there, and, it's, you just know. But yeah, she was in considerable pain. They took her off the mountain. We went into the bend. She got the whole ski patrol thing. We went in, and they diagnosed, or did the x-rays and all that stuff, and said exactly what it was, and talked about all the possibilities, and you get, it's very sobering, at the time, when they talk about, we have to perform surgery, we have to stabilize her, we'll go and put in Harrington rods and bone graft. And she had the surgery, and you had a couple of days where you didn't really know. And I was there 10 days on the floor in the chair, but after a period of time, she started to get better. They got her up to walk. She had some real problems with passing out. She recovered from that. A lot of well-wishers. I mean, everyone, as you saw, just from patients and everything, the support, the help, from family and friends. She had a full recovery. Occasionally the aches and pains. I think more in her hip, where they took the bone from than anything. And at the same time, Gloria Estefan from the Miami Sound Machine, her tour bus, got smashed into, and she had the exact same, surgery. And I was look, you're just like, a famous singer. You got the same thing. You got something in common. Why don't you write her?
Yeah, give her a call.
Give her a call, so you guys can hang out. Never happened, but we didn't ski much after that.
No.
We never went back, and we never went back to Bend. I mean, she really, wanted to be a mom. She, I don't think that she would go and have, had it any other way. Cody really was an easy child. We don't have any of the horrible stories of the terrible twos or, colicky baby. And, he really was, quite a wonderful young man growing up. Never was she, wavering at all in, her dedication to, being a mom and being, his biggest advocate and being a support, sitting with him and reading with him and, prompting him to go and get assignments in and, encouraging him and sometimes, putting a foot, in his backside and, driving him, holding him accountable. She was so good at that and, unwavering in her, commitment. And, our journey to parenting was not traditional. We had challenges. We tried to conceive when Kelly and Susan, because they were married before us. They were married in 85. Sandy and I got married in 88. And about the same time, Susan and Sandy, in 89 or so, said, hey, let's go and let's have kids together. We're friends. It'd be great. We'll raise our kids together. We can share stories. We can, swap clothes and all that stuff and do all the fun stuff that parents do. By the end of the month, Susan was pregnant. Go Kelly, good job. And Sandy wasn't. And then, another month passed and we went through all of the, checks and we tried in vitro fertilization. We were contacted by our fertility specialist that said that there was a young woman came in, 19 years old, that was pregnant and wanted to, give a child up for adoption. So she, at the time, we didn't know boy, girl. We're like, hey, as long as there's 10 fingers, 10 toes, and it'll be great. We were there at the hospital the day Cody was born. We saw him, within a minute after he was born, and looked at her and I said, we have a... And she grabbed my arm so hard, I had bruises for like 3 weeks of fingerprints just dug in to my arm. There's a 72-hour period, lemon law, whatever you want to call it, where they can go to the court and say, get it back in 72 or 6 days, or I forget. We literally went home and we closed all the blinds. That way no one can get in. No one can come in and go and take this, precious, child from us. When she was younger, she was in retail, like, a lot of folks, worked at the Gap, sold clothes, this and that. She actually went to work for Dr. Kokich from being a patient.
Yeah.
So she was there as a patient and he's like, hey, I'll teach you everything. She never formally went to school for, orthodontic assistant, but, she was a quick study, learned on the job, worked for Dr. Kokich for that number of years. In 1997, I got a job. Well, the job was in Everett. Coincidentally, because Sandy was working, I was working, Cody, got put into daycare. You start to get into the economics of daycare plus driving. It really started to make sense to not have Sandy work. So we talked about it and we both agreed. And so Sandy was a stay-at-home mom for about 4 years. As he was starting to get ready to go into school, Sandy had a friend who had been a flight attendant for one of the larger carriers for a number of years. Like, hey, you know what? They're hiring. Why don't we give it a go? And she went to the school. She did great. Really enjoyed it. When Gordon and Sandy got together, it was a challenging time for all of us to navigate our way through it. It was new. It was new. None of us had done that before. None of us had figured out how to merge. But Sandy was always there to speak reason. She was always one that wouldn't speak ill, of anyone. And the relationship that Sandy and Gordon forged, I saw it start and blossom and grow, and it really was a deep and abiding, love Sandy had for you. She helped us. I think she helped us all navigate through it and kept Cody grounded and kept him, on the right path. I think that the strength, that Gordon had combined with Sandy certainly was better for Cody in the long run. Sandy always had that level of accountability, and Gordon has a level of accountability. They're good examples. They've been good examples. When I think about, Sandy, she was that person that made everyone around her better. What I saw, in your guys' relationship was, genuine. It was inspirational. She expressed, her heartfelt and deep, love for you, the appreciation that you're in her life.
Sam and I met on a flight, check-in for a flight, 18 years ago. The plane was mostly empty for our single leg to Tucson. Sam and I talked a lot about baseball. She not only understood the game, but amazingly she knew every player on the Mariners. We arrived at the hotel in the late morning. Crew made a plan to meet up for dinner, and I went to work out. After working out, I made my way to the pool. It was about 100 degrees. Sam was lounging. I got the pool for the next 2 hours while we chatted about everything. Clearly the world and its possibilities inspired Sandy. Later at the restaurant, we all sat in the bar, and the waitress came up and asked if she could get us drinks. The first person asked, "What type of beer do you have?" The waitress responded, "We have Bud Light, Coors Light, I'll have one of those." Next person, "What other beers do you have?" "We have Pabst, Miller, I'll have a Miller." The next request was for a glass of white wine. Then came Sandy. "What else do you have for beer?" "Well, we have Budweiser, Coors, Yuengling, Michelob, and we have Fat Tire." "Fat Tire, please," was the response, which was the same as mine. Of course, Sam was beautiful, gracious, considerate, funny, clever, playful, and passionate. But gods, she also knew baseball, and she drank microbrew beers. Crackers. I was hooked. A year later, we dated. During the intervening year, Sandy and Scott chose to dissolve their marriage. Sam and I spoke frequently about logistical things like, how do I afford a house on a new flight attendant income of $27,000 a year? As scary as the breakup was, Sandy maintained a willingness to learn, try anything, a spirit that simply wouldn't be defeated. Somewhere during those conversations about houses, where to live, how to pay for food, which school should Cody attend, we started to date. Neither of us knows exactly when that transition took place. It was a long time in coming, and perhaps inevitable. Sam and Scott kind of grew up together. Sometimes that also means that people grow apart. But that never changed the friendship between Scott and Sam. And that meant a whole lot to both of them. Besides, were it not for the two of them as a couple, I'd not have Cody. Sam and I were very careful in how we chose to pursue our relationship. And by that, what I mean is we were particularly mindful of Cody. I remember vividly the first time we kissed. I could tell you where it was, but I don't know any idea when that was in our relationship, any of that. Sandy couldn't tell you either. But we both know exactly where it was and all that. Because it just changed. So we waited a good, I want to say 9 months. It was 9 months to a year before we ever did a single thing with Cody. I didn't even see Cody. And then as Sam and I decided we're more serious, then it was like, well, we could remodel my house, which was in Lake City, or we could live here. Once we made that decision and spoke with Cody, are you okay with these kinds of things? I never thought I wanted kids. In fact, I'm quite sure. But I fell for Sam, and that meant a package deal. More responsibility than I ever wanted. I came into Cody's life when he was 6. He's now 23. I'm quite lucky to have the young man in my life. This all was the best decision I ever made. To me, the best part of Cody was virtually entirely his mom. And that is, when it gets right down to it, he's a great human being. And he's a great human being mostly because of Sam. Their relationship is unique. But the person that Cody confided in is his mom. It's because of her unwavering support of him and the love that he knew he had from his mom that made it easier for him to talk to her than to anyone else. In the budding relationship with Sandy, I'm not sure anyone has accepted me so completely, so easily, so immediately, with seemingly zero reservations. I know this will come as a bit of a shock to some, but I just may not be the easiest person to get along with, let alone live with. Yet Sandy appeared to never struggle with this. Her love was unconditional, complete. This was something I'd never experienced before. Always before there were strings attached, caveats, not with Sam. It was simply love and acceptance. Due, I suppose, to my background, the words "I love you" came with great difficulty, mostly because everything I'd ever really thought I'd loved had been taken away or left me. Somewhere around 12, I swore to myself that I would never use those words lightly. If I said that to a woman, it meant I'd marry her today. Sam and I discussed this on numerous occasions. She understood. Nonetheless, she eventually said those words to me and would repeat them periodically. Quite some time later in our relationship, we were sitting on the couch, and in typical Sandy fashion, she leaned over to me, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too, Sand." She smiled and simply said, "I know. I've known for a long time." "16 more."
30.
Sand and her father played cribbage. In fact, she learned the game just so she could play with him till he passed. She and I played as well, and it was quite common to see Sam and I sitting at a local bistro or out on a layover with cards, a cribbage board, and a dark beer. Somewhere along the line, I had the brilliant idea of teaching her how to play board games. Whether Ticket to Ride, Stone Age, Viticulture, or another, who'd have believed that inside her resided this previously unknown and now unlocked glee in kicking someone else's ass. Usually it was mine.
Hey, Sandy, we've won 1,000 times today.
Yes.
What do you say to that?
Woot, woot.
Hey, Gordon, you didn't.
What do you say to that? Woot, woot.
That's a different finger I'm not familiar with.
I am just this way.
Sam and I, we created one huge connection, which is funny because it wasn't a connection when we first met at all. We both decided with the Linwood house and the putting in of the yard and all that, we just loved gardening and making things be beautiful and as peaceful as possible. The last 3 years we lived here, the house we had built north of Lake Stevens. This place is Sandy. Nearly anything could happen, and the refuge found here magically relieved the stress. Often you'd hear Sandy say, "I love my home." For both of us, the home represents peace. And whether leaving an apple for the deer that frequent the backyard, or filling the hummingbird feeders, bread for the robins, nuts for the squirrels and chipmunks, my wildflowers to the rabbits, Sam made sure that beside us, the other creatures felt that peace was here too. More and more it became this thing where we just needed to have more space. Sam was so excited about this layout and so excited about the property and, you know, the things that we were doing. Here we have a house, and it was just a house. So you essentially have to landscape an entire acre. We really had to focus on like individual projects because otherwise it was overwhelming. You know, and San's a trooper, and oh my gosh, you know, if you said, hey, why don't we do blah blah blah, if that appealed to her, it was just going to get done. It was easy. But the backyard was just mud.
Oh yeah.
And we brought in dirt, we brought in the rockery, we put in the water feature, we did all of these kinds of things, and it sort of became obsessive to her, which was great because it's very therapeutic. You feel like you're accomplishing a lot, and then you get that added luxury of not only having accomplished a lot. We all did well in school. We all know what it is to feel like you accomplished something and you got a good grade. Well, that disappears. Here, when you accomplish something, you get to sit on the back porch with a beer or a glass of wine and enjoy it. This was peace.
For a lot of years, we went boating and we'd go up to the San Juans, and you just meet folks walking up and down. The recurring theme over and over was Sandy was that person. She was the central connector in our life. She was always wide open immediately. She was so graceful in everything. You know, where she would go from the earliest days. You know, she could make friends no matter where. You know, whether we were boating or camping. You know, a decade of whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
If you look at those pictures and you look at the people around, they were brighter because they were reflecting the brightness that she was. And you know, her connections with people were both quick but genuine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then lasting. You know, she would go and bring people in, and they would stay, and
Yes.
she would remember them and remember things about them. I remember when Bibi, you know, a friend of hers for years and years, when she passed, you know, it was, you know, really hard on Sandy because it was a lifelong friend. But when Sandy broke her back, they put this out across the counter when she was an orthodontic assistant at Dr. Cook's office, and you can kind of see, we won't really get the full gist of it, but we'll scan it in. But at the time, you got patients and friends and people who came in. I mean, there's at least a good, you know, 70 to 100.
Some on the back.
And there's some on the back, yeah, you know, on there. One person, you know, just I read through the comments. You know, I've kept this for years, and the glowing, you know, well wishes to get better. I think you could get that in reflected from everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, I've heard from different people over the course of time in the last couple of months that, you know, they express their condolences, but then they just say how much of an influence Sandy was in their life. You know, over the time, I saw Sandy blossom from, you know, a teen into, you know, a young lady, into, you know, a very classy, dignified woman, someone that I respected, loved, will always miss, someone that I looked up to and respected. She was always that bright light, no matter what. It was just reoccurrent throughout our whole life, from the time I, you know, met her, you know, right up until, you know, the day she passed. She is truly that special person, and, you know, I don't think you'd find a person. You could search high and low. I don't think you'd find a person who could go and share a negative story or share a negative anecdote or have really anything negative to say about Sandy.
Yeah.
And it's it's amazing. We're better people for having known her.
Undeniably.
She was genuine in, if she gave you a suggestion, it was a genuine suggestion. It was, hey, here's what I think. And it was never any of that, false pride, monkey business that, we're all fallible, and deal with that or don't deal with.
If you were a friend of Sandy's, you were a friend forever.
Mm-hmm.
And there is nothing in the world she wouldn't do for you. It's just that simple.
Folks would come in and, she was just that wonderful that they'd stay forever.
In our neighborhood right here, we have next door neighbors on one side, and we have next door neighbors on another side, and it's amazing how quickly they became friends. It was entirely because of Sandy. It's just staggering how quickly people became friends and what it meant, and how, even at this point, even after just a couple of years living up here, how difficult it is for both of them now that Sandy's no longer here. It's just that kind of an impact. There are a few restaurants that we would go to and frequent, and we'd go in and play cribbage and have a beer and have something to eat, and it's like the entire place, the employees will stop just to say hi to you. The place we would frequent in Newark, Bellows, we were invited to, I think, 4 different weddings over the course of years. Sandy, why don't you come? Oh, yeah, you can bring Gordon if you have to. It was with Alaska Airlines, they show the picture and they talk about the passing of one of the flight attendants in our in-flight area. And the book is just full of comments. Sandy was the best human being I've ever known. Her ease with a smile, her constant support of others, her inclusiveness. Even when she took a minute to understand something, it was adorable. With a smile. The world just seemed to gravitate to her. It was infectious. It was inspiring. She absolutely made me a better person. I remember us coming off a plane with the departing crew in the jetway and a flight attendant saying hi, and then seeing Sandy and saying, "Oh, hi!" She pointed at Sandy, then pointed at me and stated, "She is the best part of you." Not an uncommon thought, I guess. Where there are very few flight attendants, probably co-workers, even family, that probably wouldn't agree, I'm a much better human being today than I was prior to Sandy.
Well, like you said earlier, whether it's the mountain or, whales, dolphins.
Oh my gosh. Hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds.
It doesn't matter,
whatever it is, that infectiousness where, she committed and she was all in and really excited about it. Always. And
her friendships
never
were
wavered.
Exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Part of Sandy's contagiousness is the fact that she gets so bloody excited about things that it makes you almost giggle. I mean, in a weird sort of way. And you just kind of went along with whatever she was excited with. Apparently, I'm excited too. Other than family, there were 4 things that Sandy had an unquenchable love for: dogs, dolphins, hummingbirds, and Mount Rainier. Her love and fascination for the peak. Many days it was visible on our drive down I-5 from Lake Stevens to work. Somewhere around Boeing Field, we would suddenly see Rainier, and I'd hear the same refrain, some version of, "The mountain is out, there's my mountain." When we moved to Lake Stevens, we would often see Mount Baker. One beautiful day, while driving the 2 miles of eastbound Highway 2 between I-5 and Highway 204, we had an amazing view of both Mount Baker to the north and Mount Rainier to the south. Sandy got a huge grin on her face and exclaimed, "Look, now I have 2 mountains." I smiled at her, and with a grin I said, "Sweetheart, you've had 2 mountains for quite some time." She punched me in the arm.
God, you guys are fuckers. Fuckers.
Sam, you are my greatest gift ever. Someday I'll be able to recognize that we had over 17 years as a fabulous couple, But right now, I just feel selfish for all that I've lost. I wish I could do it all over again to make sure you know just how much I adore you. Make sure you know you were and are the most important thing in my life. Like many of my friends, coworkers, and acquaintances, I didn't even know I had a heart. Turns out I do. And damn, it's broken. Sam, I love you with all my heart. I miss you more than I ever thought possible.